Let's be real. The UFC was never just about fighting. It's about drama, about chaos, about two grown men showing up to a cage with years of bad blood, then trying to beat it out of each other in front of millions. Some rivalries, they just hit different. They don't feel like fight night. They feel like war. This video isn't a highlight reel. It's a deep dive into the most unforgettable rivalries in UFC history. The ones that made headlines, broke friendships, sold pay-per-views, and in some cases, left lasting scars. The kind of beef that didn't end at the final bell. The kind that spilled over into press conferences, courtrooms, group chats, and sometimes a full-on cage jump. Because when two fighters genuinely hate each other, you feel it. Every stare down is tense, every punch is personal, and every second sells the fight like nothing else could. These rivalries didn't just get fans talking. They defined eras. They shaped careers. They changed the UFC forever. So if you live for the feuds, the mind games, the disrespect, and the moments that made MMA history, yeah, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Israel Adesanya, the last stylebender versus Alex Pereira, Pauata. Some rivalries are born in press conferences. This one started in another sport, in another country, before either of these men had ever touched the UFC canvas. Before Israel Adesanya was dancing his way into pay-per-view main events, and before Alex Pereira was walking into the cage like a stone-faced executioner, they were kickboxers, not MMA fighters, not household names, just two absolute killers in the world of professional kickboxing. Their first fight, 2016, Glory of Heroes 1, China. Adesanya came in confident, sharp, elusive as always. He was piecing Pereira up, clean shots, slick movement, doing Israel Adesanya things, until Pereira started figuring out the rhythm. It went to decision. Pereira won. Close fight, but the seed was planted. Two warriors, one clear problem. Pereira had the one thing Adesanya couldn't shake: power. Ridiculous power. You blink, he erases you. Fast forward to 2017, rematch, Glory of Heroes 7. This time, Adesanya was winning even more convincingly, controlling distance, landing at will, and probably thinking, I got this. And then Pereira reminded him what happens when you relax for half a second. Left hook, lights out. Israel Adesanya, out cold. Laid flat on the canvas. Not rocked, not wobbled, out. And that's where most stories would end. But this is MMA, and things were just getting started. Years passed. Adesanya crossed over into MMA and stormed through the UFC's middleweight division. Everyone who tried to stand with him got dissected. Robert Whittaker, shut down. Paulo Costa, made to look like a drunk bodybuilder walking into traffic. Yoel Romero, stared at him for 5 rounds and still got cooked. Israel Adesanya became the undisputed champion. One of the most precise strikers the sport has ever seen. A master of range, movement, and mental warfare. But even with the belt around his waist and the UFC's marketing engine at full speed, there was one shadow he couldn't shake: Alex Pereira. Meanwhile, Pereira finally made the switch to MMA. It was quiet at first, but if you were paying attention, you knew what was coming. You knew the UFC wasn't signing him just for fun. They signed him to end a story, or restart it. Pereira debuted in the UFC in 2021, and in just 3 fights, he earned a shot at the same man he left unconscious years earlier. The story wrote itself. The rematch everyone wanted, but this time, small gloves, elbows, takedowns, clinch, different rules, same bad blood. UFC 281, Madison Square Garden, 2022. It was the showdown of the year, and once again, Israel Adesanya was winning. Clean striking, octagon control, nearly finished Pereira at the end of round 1. You could feel the revenge arc loading. Then came round 5. Pereira stalked him like a predator that had already tasted blood, cornered him, and boom, left hook, right hand, uppercut. Adesanya wobbled, froze, and just like that, history repeated itself. Alex Pereira by TKO. 2 sports, 3 fights, 3 wins for Pereira. Adesanya's aura cracked, not broken, but for the first time, people questioned whether the last stylebender was more flash than substance. But Israel Adesanya doesn't run from pressure. That's not how he's built. He's not the type to disappear when the spotlight burns. He asked for the rematch. UFC 287. No belt-holding politics, no excuses, just revenge or ruin. And this time, it was personal. No dancing, no theatrics, just one mission: erased the man who had haunted him across 2 sports and 7 years. Adesanya fought smart, patient, took damage, gave it back. And then, in round 2, he saw his moment. Pereira lunged in. Adesanya dodged, planted, and dropped the hammer. Right hand. Again and again. Pereira collapsed. Cold. 7 years of pain. 1 shot to end it. Adesanya didn't just win, he exercised something. Stood over Pereira, pulled imaginary arrows from his chest, and fired them right back. Symbolic, petty, powerful, and honestly, kind of perfect. Some rivalries are fueled by trash talk. This one was pure combat. 2 men, bound by violence and destiny. Kickboxing, MMA, title belts, knockouts, losses, comebacks. And even though it's 3-1 on paper, this feud isn't over. Not really. Not with Pereira now reigning at light heavyweight. Not with both men still at the top. Khabib Nurmagomedov, the Eagle, versus Conor McGregor, the Notorious. This wasn't just a fight. This was a cultural collision. East versus West. Respect versus disrespect. Discipline versus ego. It was never going to be clean. It was never going to be quiet. And by the time it was over, nobody was the same. Let's rewind. Khabib Nurmagomedov, the silent assassin from Dagestan, undefeated, dominant, smashing guys on the ground like he was playing with crash test dummies. A fighter raised in the mountains, wrestling bears before breakfast, trained in the art of grind you into the mat until you break. Not flashy, not loud, just destruction in human form. Then there's Conor McGregor, the Irish superstar, the talker, the showman, the guy who could sell a fight better than the UFC's entire PR department. Left hand from hell, might game even sharper. He'd already conquered featherweight and lightweight, turned press conferences into performance art, and had just returned from boxing Floyd Mayweather like it was a normal thing people do. They were on a collision course, but it didn't start with title belts. It started with something far more chaotic. April 2018, UFC 223, Brooklyn. Khabib corners Artem Lobov, McGregor's teammate, in a hotel, confronts him, slaps him. Word gets back to Conor, and Conor goes full GTA side mission. He gets on a private jet from Ireland, storms into Barclays Center during media day, and throws a steel dolly through a bus window. Glass everywhere. Fighters cut, chaos. And Khabib, sitting calmly on the bus, watching it happen like it was a bad movie with his name in the credits. McGregor gets arrested, UFC suspends him, but it doesn't matter. The fight is already selling itself. UFC 229, the most anticipated bout in MMA history. The build-up? Nuclear. McGregor goes deep, past fight hype into religion, family, nationalism. Calls Khabib's father a coward, trashes Dagestan, takes shots at his manager, his team, his faith. It wasn't just trash talk. It felt dangerous. And when fight night came, the air was thick with tension. This wasn't a crowd, it was a battlefield. Irish flags, Dagestani chants. Vegas had never felt more like a powder keg. The fight? It wasn't close. Khabib didn't just win, he dominated. Took McGregor down, controlled him, humiliated him. Talked to him during the fight. Round 4, Khabib sinks in the neck crank. Conor taps. No resistance, no escape. But that wasn't the end. Khabib stands up, screams something at Conor's corner, and then he jumps the cage. Like actually jumps over the octagon fence and into the crowd, launching himself at Dylan Dennis, McGregor's teammate, like an angry eagle looking for vengeance. All hell breaks loose. Brawls in the stands, in the cage, out of the cage. The arena turns into a riot, and in that moment, it stopped being a fight and became a full-on chapter in UFC history. Both men were fined. Khabib was suspended, McGregor was banned for 6 months, but the damage, or the legacy, was already done. This rivalry became the most viewed, most discussed, most chaotic saga in UFC history. And it wasn't just about the violence. It was about identity, about the clash between 2 worlds. Khabib represented humility, control, legacy. McGregor represented bravado, chaos, celebrity. And for once, the guy with the quiet eyes and the bare wrestling childhood walked into Vegas and shut down the biggest mouth in the game. Jon Bones Jones versus Daniel Cormier. Popeye's chicken. Some rivalries are built in the cage. This one started before the cage. Before the gloves, before the weigh-ins. This was pure hatred. The kind that doesn't fade after the final bell. Jon Jones versus Daniel Cormier wasn't about a title. It was about something way deeper. It was about identity. Let's start at the top. Jon Jones, a phenom, a generational talent, youngest champion in UFC history, unorthodox striking, insane reach, fight IQ through the roof, but also a walking contradiction. Brilliant in the cage, wild out of it. DUIs, suspensions, failed drug test, hit-and-run incidents, vacated titles, public apologies, followed by more chaos. The guy was either the greatest fighter of all time or the greatest waste of potential, depending on the day of the week. And then there's Daniel Cormier, the opposite in every way. Olympic wrestler, class act, company man, the guy who wore the suit, shook the hands, and always showed up clean. A true professional, respected, reliable, and honestly, one of the best to ever do it. But no matter what Cormier achieved, Jon Jones was always in his way. Their feud started in 2014, but the tension had been building for years. Cormier moved down from heavyweight just to chase greatness, and that greatness had a name: Jon Bones Jones. UFC 178 Media Day. They square off. Jones puts his forehead against Cormier's. Cormier shoves him. Jones swings, and the press conference turns into a full-on brawl. Suits flying, backdrops collapsing, PR team screaming like it was a bar fight on ESPN, and that was just the promo tour. When they finally fought at UFC 182, it was real. Raw, tense, they clinched, elbowed, trashed each other mid-fight. Cormier even landed a takedown, which, at the time, was considered a moral victory. But the scorecards weren't moral. Jones won. Clear decision. And afterward, Jones mocked him, said, "I took him down. I beat him at his own game." Cold. That moment broke something. Cormier was shattered. Publicly, emotionally. In his own words, "I worked so hard to chase this guy, and I just couldn't beat him." Then things got weirder. Jon Jones got suspended for a hit and run. Title stripped. Cormier fights Anthony Johnson for the vacant belt and wins. But the shadow of Jones never left. Jones returns. UFC 200 is scheduled. The rematch. It's finally happening. Then, boom. Jones tests positive for a banned substance. Fight canceled. Cormier is left in tears, again, literally crying backstage. The rematch slips away. A year later, they finally fight at UFC 214. Cormier looks better, stronger, more prepared. Then, round 3 happens. Jones lands a brutal head kick. Cormier stumbles, Jones pounces, TKO. Done. Redemption, right? Not so fast. Weeks later, Jones fails another drug test. The win gets overturned. Fight ruled a no contest. Title stripped. Again. Cormier is reinstated as champ by default. Imagine that. You lose, you get knocked out, and then you're told, "Hey, congrats. You're champion again because the other guy failed a test." It's not a victory, it's a technicality. And Cormier knew it. Through it all, Cormier remained classy. Jones stayed chaotic. And the tension never really broke. They both claimed moral high ground in different ways. Jones said Cormier was never the real champ. Cormier said Jones could never stay clean long enough to prove he was the best. And the fans? We just watched the wreckage. Every time they fought, or almost fought, it felt like something bigger was at stake. Not just belts, but identity, legacy, character. Jones was the talent with demons. Cormier was the discipline with limits. And maybe that's why this rivalry mattered so much, because it wasn't just about who won the fight. It was about what kind of man wins in the end. Jones might go down as the greatest of all time. His resume is undeniable, but his story always complicated. Cormier, he retired with dignity, became a beloved commentator, a role model, a fighter's fighter. But even now, when people mention Cormier, Jones is still in the sentence. And when they talk about Jones, Cormier's name lingers like an unresolved chapter. They fought twice. Maybe someday they'll talk. But even if they don't, this rivalry, it's already in the history books. Because sometimes the best fights are the ones that keep echoing, even after the final bell. 4 rivalries, 4 eras, and every single one left a mark on the UFC. But the fight game never stops. New names, new beefs, new chaos. It's already brewing. So, if you're into real stories, real history, and the moments that made the sport what it is, stick around. Drop a comment, tell us what rivalry we missed, and what you want to see next. Because we're just getting started.